Hello, everyone. Welcome to a series of podcasts from UPrime in the public domain for the public interest. Today, we'll talk about population growth. Is that the topic?
Yes,
Yeah.
population growth,
So,
the
what do we
unknown
have?
future. So, at the start of the article, there were like pretty funny but interesting terms I came across. So, the terms were baby boom and pappy boom. What
Yeah.
what do they exactly mean?
So, baby boom is apparently a term that is used for a country's huge increase in birth rate. So, you have excessive birth rate. When you compare historical averages, you call that period or that country's state as baby boom state.
Okay. And
Pappy boom is the exact opposite, wherein like you have older population, people who are in the senior citizen category, their population increase as a percentage of the rest of the population over a period of time. That country's state is called pappy boom state.
Okay, seeing the growth of the current population,
Of which country? The whole
the
world.
whole world, I'm talking
Yeah,
the whole world,
yeah.
what do you expect to happen so that there is enough place for people to live peacefully? Say, for example, a World War III or a Transformers should come and wipe out some part of the world, or like a zombie apocalypse.
So I think there is a lot of space in there's a lot of space in JP Nagar 8th phase. I mean, if you come there, I mean, there's lots of space. It's just that in the middle of the city, you feel congested because everyone wants to live in the city. So let me understand it right. The question is, why is there scarcity of living spaces? So, one, there is massive migration in a country like India, wherein people from various different places come and try to make a living in a city because the jobs are in the city. So, as long as that is there, this is going to get worse, not the opposite. As long as the country's jobs or the economy is totally dependent on few urban cities, this trend is going to continue. So, yeah.
Yeah, so you're saying that there is space, but it's not being used effectively.
There is plenty of space, but it's not being used effectively because the cost of doing business outside a city or in a small town is extremely high. Hiring talent
Yeah.
outside a major metropolis is,
So most try to cramp up into one space.
yeah, that is true.
Yeah. Okay, fine. Even so, like even if there is enough space,
Yeah.
I grew up watching this documentary called The Unconventional Truth.
Yeah.
So basically, with extremely increasing population growth, nature is somehow going to react and screw us all. Like
Yeah.
we are abusing nature. So what's your take on that?
So, if you're talking about climate change,
Yeah,
or
climate change.
human intervention in climate change,
Right.
climate is there is a consensus. There are reports which say that 95% of the scientific population agree on the idea that climate change is caused by human intervention. But it depends on which aisle of political spectrum you belong to. The traditional conservative right-wing politics has never believed in the idea of climate change because they believe in the idea of private enterprises being able to marshal the natural resources that are available to increase production so that normal people, the prices come low so that normal people can afford commodities, goods, whatever they might be. So they put out an argument saying that, see, this climate change concept might be true, but we don't see any dramatic changes happening. Life as usual is continuing as we know it. So we will try to go to the brink and
Yeah,
see what happens.
that's because they're seeing in a very small timeline, not the bigger picture, right?
Yeah. That is true. That is true. I agree to that.
Okay, so there's this idea that population increase also helps in economic growth, like the right growth rate.
population increase is the only reason economies grow.
Yeah, and population increase is also going to affect nature. So population decrease is going to cause effect in the economy. So
Yeah.
either ways, we are just screwed.
Yeah, that is true. So you have to somehow figure out a way by which you have a space in the new economy wherein you take advantage of these effects that are happening, wherein there are people living in urban spaces and trying to make a living in the new economy, the startup economy. You have a leg there. At the same time, you have a hedge against this going down. So hedge meaning you can. I'm just talking about an investment point of view. You can probably, if the world comes to an end or if there is a major apocalypse, we should have some ways by which you can protect yourself. So I think being in Bangalore, I don't think you have such a threat. Unless you're living in a coastal region, you don't see any serious threat to your day-to-day life. Unless there is an earthquake and you don't know what to do. I mean, there is no way to predict an earthquake, or if the earth opens up and there is a volcano, there is no way. There's nothing we can do with the current technology that we have.
Also, it's mentioned that certain European countries have diminishing population.
That is true. That is true. So,
what do you think the reason?
so the GDP is a direct result of your growth. So if you have a GDP growth of a country which is twice the growth, the real GDP growth of a country being twice that of the population growth, that is stable enough.
Yeah.
So anything less than that, you're not producing enough so that enough resources are distributed to the entirety of the population.
And on the other hand, China has a strict rule of just the two-child policy.
They
So-
have a rule of one-child
Yeah.
policy, which they're trying to change to two-child
Two-child
policy,
policy.
or like at least remove the one-child policy clause so that
Because they don't have enough labor force. So
the labor force we talk about is people living in the age group of 16 to 65. That as a percentage of the overall population is s- growing slowly. Let's put it that way. That's the most accurate way to characterize China's current demographic divide. People in excess of 65 as a percentage of the overall population have steadily increased in the last 10 years. So that might be a huge threat for them, because if you don't grow, you won't be able to give healthcare for people in the latter part of their life.
Okay, so is the growth in population is affecting the healthcare in a positive or a negative way? Is it affecting in a positive or a negative way?
Any product, any service that you provide to citizens will be affected if there is increased demand and not enough supply.
Okay.
So the rate at which the healthcare services have to grow, that should be at par with the rate at which the population grows. If you're not able to keep up with that pace, you will end up having a shortfall. So,
Okay.
which
Now-
would mean only the demand goes up, supply is low, the demand goes up, and the prices for services is slightly higher. So people at the higher end of the income spectrum will be able to afford services, and people at the lower end of the spectrum will rely on government assistance, which in a country like India is not available, so there is no safety net.
This is also connected to how educated people are regarding the population growth and the healthcare part of it.
Yeah, but education is at the center of everything. If you're aware of these problems, you'll probably mitigate these problems by taking steps in your personal life so that you don't get the bad end of the stick. Education is vital. What was the second part of the question? Is it linked to healthcare?
Yeah, the both. If people are educated about both healthcare and population,
Yeah.
so they'll know how to lead a life with what they have.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. So I agree. So if people are more educated on this topic, that's one of the motivations of UPrime, right? To disseminate knowledge as much as possible, whenever possible, like we are doing right now.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So this article, when I read it, it totally depressed me.
Oh, is it?
So yeah, definitely. I'll tell you why. Okay, there was this line. I just want to ask. I just want to know if it's true. Is it true that people had incentives to raise more kids only in hopes that one of them would survive time in the past?
Yeah, that is true. And the reason that was true or perceived was true at the time. See, life expectancy in 1800 was about 31. 1900 it was 47. 2000 it's 75. So you see, every 100 years, the life expectancy of people around the world increases by around 25 to 35 years. So that would mean if you calculate it per year, every year that goes by, your life expectancy increases by 3 months.
Okay.
So when you think of that concept, you can totally imagine the stereotypical close-mindedness of people who are in the 60s and 70s to think that way. That
Right.
isn't true. That doesn't. condone their viewpoints in any way, but you have to understand where they come from. They come from a place where people were not living that longer. So now it is not a burden that people have to bear. It's a much different world.
Yeah, it kind of looked like how fishes would lay millions of eggs in hopes that few of them would survive.
Oh, that's actually a very primal survival instinct.
Yeah.
Every organism which has sort of survived this race of species has
Right.
gone through. So everybody, in whatever activity they do, at the core of it, they try to pass their own kind into the world, as it were.
Being one of the youngest country of the world, India, do
Okay,
you think our youngsters are properly used in the economy of the country?
the answer will be no to almost every country on the planet except the Scandinavian countries, where if you want to start a company, the hardest part is to hire people and nobody is available for work because everybody is working. So countries like that tend to do well in the economic system that we live in because they're very small in nature. There are like 5 million people there.
Given that as women get educated, even in countries like India will be difficult for them to maintain the population growth rate.
We don't have to maintain a population growth. It's not like a statutory obligation that people
Exactly. So that's
yeah,
it.
we don't have any obligation to maintain any birth rates. So the invisible hand of Adam Smith is working here because things are costly, and if you have a child, it will take a certain amount of standard of living to have an extra child. So it will kind of force people to look at their family planning aspects more carefully, which is the way it ought to be. I mean, you take responsibility for your actions and stuff. Thanks everyone for watching the podcast. I hope you had a good time understanding and listening to all these things. Hope you come back and watch more. Thank you.